Welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're taking a super fascinating deep dive into a very specific, kind of wild corner of internet relationship psychology. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to unpack a concept that's been heavily, and I mean heavily, discussed in certain male-centric online spaces. We're drawing directly from our source material today to break down this philosophy, figure out the lingo, and see exactly how its proponents view modern dating dynamics. It's a universal question, right? Like, why do some people just never seem to get over a particular ex? I mean, pretty much all of us have dealt with lingering heartbreak, or at least we know a friend who has. But here's the thing. In the specific internet subculture we're looking at today, this inability to move on isn't just viewed as your run-of-the-mill heartbreak. It is categorized as a very specific structural phenomenon with its own rigid set of rules and a whole dictionary of terminology. Which brings us right to our first major concept. Section 1, the alpha widow phenomenon. So we're going to look at this through a completely neutral analytical lens to explore exactly how the speaker in our source material frames this whole concept. He sees it as a massive defining issue in modern relationships. According to the source, an alpha widow is a term used to describe a woman who gets completely stuck emotionally on a past relationship with a highly dominant man, what he calls the alpha, and she basically just can't move on. Interestingly, though, the speaker points out that men have their own version of this. He calls it one-itis. One-itis is described as this male illusion of finding a single perfect soulmate, where a guy puts a woman on an impossible pedestal and as a result totally stuns his own personal growth. Now, for the alpha widow dynamic, the speaker argues it usually kicks off from a woman's really early, naive relationship experiences, back when she drops all of her defenses. Section 2. Traits of the alpha male. So what exactly makes someone an alpha in this highly specific worldview? Well, the source breaks it down for us, and this brilliantly illustrates the core contrast the speaker makes. On one side, we have the alpha. The speaker defines him as a guy who fundamentally loves himself first. He acts as the absolute leader, and most importantly, he maintains his own frame or reality. It's very much a my way or the highway mentality. Now, on the flip side, we have what the speaker refers to as old programming. This describes a man who puts the woman first, constantly bends over backward to please her, and basically operates out of this deep-seated anxiety that she's eventually going to leave him. The source argues that it's precisely the alpha's sheer independence and rigid boundaries that naturally create this immense magnetic attraction. Section 3. The psychology of rejection. Now, this number right here, this is a really crucial pillar of the speaker's entire argument. He claims that women typically initiate the end of about 80% of relationships. So, because of this super high statistic, he argues that the female ego is essentially conditioned to be the one doing the dumping. Therefore, when an alpha male flips the script and preemptively walks away first, the source says it delivers this massive, unprecedented, shocking blow to her ego. It just completely shatters the expected dynamic. Let's move to and see how this builds. The speaker actually maps this whole process out chronologically. Step 1, you have a young, naive woman entering a relationship, completely dropping her guard and basically ignoring any red flags or outside warnings. Step 2, the alpha male feels like his boundaries or his rules have been crossed, so he asserts his frame and just walks away, literally without looking back. Step 3, because she is absolutely not used to facing rejection, her ego is completely shattered. And finally, step 4, this creates a deep, lingering fracture in her emotional map, cementing her new status as an alpha widow. The speaker even goes so far as to warn guys that if she ever tries to come back to the relationship, it's often secretly driven by this subconscious desire to regain power and get revenge, rather than, actual genuine love. Section 4, analyzing a real-world case. To actually ground this theory, the source material gives us an audio case study to look at. In it, you hear a tearful woman describing a 7-month relationship with a Gemini man who happened to be 12 years older than her. She talks about how intensely attached she became, even though she clearly notes that his feelings were completely murky. He was incredibly inconsistent, like showering her with tons of attention one day and then turning totally distant and cold the next. Remember, we are analyzing this real-world example exclusively through the lens of the speaker's philosophy, just to see how his specific rules apply to her story. The speaker really dissects her profound attachment into a few key elements. First up, those mixed signals she mentioned. Well, the speaker claims that this exact kind of inconsistency is precisely what fuels intense attraction. Second, she mentioned that her mother and sister were traveling at the time, which meant this older man swooped in and provided a strong sense of protection right when she was feeling isolated. The source argues that because of her lack of relationship experience and her deliberate choice to ignore the warnings of what he calls the sisterhood, the collective cautionary advice from other women, she fell hook, line, and sinker into his frame. Crucially, the speaker insists that what she is calling love is strictly categorized in his philosophy as mere admiration of the man's dominance. So, according to the source, the sequence of this particular breakup played out exactly by the Alpha playbook. First, she tells a friend about their secret relationship. When the man finds out about this, he feels his rule, what the speaker calls his frame, has been completely violated. So in response, he just instantly walks away. Now, what's fascinating is that the speaker casually labels this sudden withdrawal as a gaslighting tactic, specifically used to punish her for breaking his rules. Because her ego simply cannot handle this abrupt total rejection, she repeatedly begs him to take her back. She tries absolutely every method possible, and every single one is completely unsuccessful.
Section 5, Final Advice and Guidelines.
After laying out this totally elaborate theory, what actionable advice does the speaker actually give to his male audience? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the two probabilities he maps out for when a man finally decides to walk away from a disrespectful relationship. Probability A, she eventually returns, but it takes a really long time. Why? Because the man previously tolerated too much disrespect, which heavily weakened his position. Then there's probability B, she never returns at all. The speaker's ultimate takeaway advice here is that men must adopt a strict philosophy of zero expectations. He says they have to be completely at peace with walking away at any given moment just to preserve their dignity and their frame. And that brings us to the speaker's core thesis: begin as an alpha, end as an alpha. He strongly advises men who have been acting weak or beta in their current relationship to not even bother trying to change their behavior with that partner. According to the source, the woman's impression of you is already permanently set in stone. Once she has seen you as weak or overly accommodating, you literally cannot magically flip a switch and become an alpha in her eyes. The dynamic is already defined. So his firm advice: save your energy, leave the relationship entirely, and start fresh with someone completely new, making absolutely sure the alpha frame is established from day one. And there you have it. We have unpacked the alpha widow phenomenon and explored the highly structured, very specific worldview presented in our source material today. From these concepts of frame and ego-shattering rejection, all the way to the stark advice of never trying to fix a broken image. So I gotta leave you with this. What do you actually think of this modern internet dating philosophy? Does it hold any mirror to reality, or is it just another digital echo chamber? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.